Yeah, this is my second recording today about autism and chronology. My first one didn't work because I did not put my phone on silent and somebody rang me up partway through. And that reminded me about autism and organisation, short-term memory and executive function things. One needs to remember the basics to get something done, which in the previous instance I forgot. And I'll do something about that later when I've had time to look more into it. But today's video is about autism and chronology. It's autism and knowing the passing of time. It's quite different to, say, having a watch and knowing where I am in time and having things written down. Sometimes I prefer a digital clock. Sometimes I prefer an analog clock face. But somehow to see where I am in time, and this is very common in autism, and I think in neurodiversity in general, is that I don't have any sense of the passing of time. I have no sense of where I am in time, and if I'm going to do anything right now, how long that will need to take and whether I'll be able to do other things later. In about 40 minutes, I'm about to go somewhere with my wife. We've got something to do. And I have been stressing over that all morning. That prompted me to do this video about chronology, so I've been looking and preparing for it. But the anxiety has come from simply not knowing where I am in time, not knowing how long what I'm doing now will last, whether it will eat up any time in the future, whether I'll get to the place we're going on time. My wife, by the way, is also autistic, and she's stressing about the same thing. And this is just hard to explain, but one intellectually knows about time, and I know what it is, and I know how to plan things. But when I'm there on real time, real day, I have no sense of where I am in time, no sense of chronology. This is why a lot of autistic people might appear sometimes overly pedantic, or I've got to do this and finish this to get that done, finish this to get that done. Have you noticed how many autistic people have to finish a task or finish what they're saying, close it down, move to the next thing? This is all very regular. They're often very insistent on doing it. And I can be the same thing. And part of that reason is one doesn't get a sense of the flow of time or where I am in time, any sense of a flow of anything as regarding that. So one gets very, very anxious about time and about, do I have enough time? Will things fit in? Also, how long will things last? I'm planning a route to go somewhere for a job. And at the moment, I do not know how long it will take. So I don't know when to plan to start off, how to get there. What I normally do is I use belt and braces approach, and I start everything far too early, simply because I can build a little bit of waiting time in if needs be, and it's a little bit of time for thinking and reflection and planning. But it is weird. I didn't kind of really know how to explain this, but it's very, very common. Have a think about an autistic child at school, what they might be going through. I can remember it too. Lessons, timetables, it's really hard to work out where you're at with anything, or even being given a task within a lesson. How long will it take? Will I get it finished? Will I get it done? Very often, a lot of children, and actually adults, often when we're on time-limited things, we'll often freeze with anxiety because we just don't know how to fit what we're doing into time and what we'll do. I have so many times in my life had to cut things off short because I just didn't know. See, it's a strange thing. I don't sense the passing of time at all. A lot of us don't. It's quite common. So how do I know when to start things? How do I know how long to take? How do I know how to pace it? It's very, very hard. I find, say, working on training, when I'm working for a day, I can get it done, believe me, and that's simply practice and that's simply training. But I have ways and means that a lot of people aren't aware of knowing where I am in the day, what part of the training I'm delivering, where I'm going to with it. A lot of people wonder why. I often have, a lot of people do a PowerPoint presentation. I don't do death by PowerPoint. It contains material I can cover anyway. I have actually freed myself up from having to finish it because I will cover everything in a story, in a narrative. I have a very different way of marking time. I don't do it in segments. I do it. It's a story. The only way I can understand it is through the flow and through process, which is what a lot of people do. I do a lot of work again with learning disabled people as well, and they do flow and process to figure out where they are in time. they've done so many things, so they're kind of at this point in time. And also I do what a lot of learning disabled people do as well, is I'm looking left and right. What are people doing around me? What clues is that giving me as to where I am in the day, as to where things are moving? I observe circumstances, I observe behaviours around, and learning disabled people will do the same thing as well, to figure out where one is, because that's far more useful than thinking about time and the passage of time. It's more flow and process. So, and I help a lot of autistic people when I'm training, well, certainly not training, when I'm mentoring them to understand this. I also help members of staff on staff teams to help understand this too, because a lot of people they work with might balk at something and decide, oh, not doing it, far too anxious, can't do it. A lot of it is because of chronology. They're anxious about time, the time it will take to get this thing done. When will they finish? Also, when you start something, how long will it last? It can feel like, if I begin something, I've actually got some gardening to do, I've got a hedge to trim, and I'm almost scared of starting that job, because I do not know how long it will take and when it will finish. I've trimmed the hedge for many, many years, 20 or so years. It's not a very big thing. It's a yew tree bush hedge type thing I've got out front, and every time I'm very, very stressed over how long the job will last. Can I attempt the job? Will I fit the job into the time? And often I stand there, or sometimes I sit, or sometimes I'm just frozen, can't start, because I don't know where it sits in time. And a lot of people I work with too do not know where this sits in time. And I train members of staff to understand what it's like when you're working alongside someone who is frozen because they can't figure out how something is going to fit into time. There's no sense of past, present, future. It's just now, but where does now connect with anything else? It's a hard old thing to describe. Intellectually, I know how to look at time. I have clocks, but I never feel it. It's like eating and drinking and not knowing when you're hungry or thirsty, or not knowing when you're full. It's a similar thing with time, and this is very, very common. So when you're with it, if you are autistic, it's useful to learn techniques for getting through chronologies and times and sequences of things. I go by flow and process. If I've done this much, it's kind of that much time, or it's not even that. If I've done this much, I know I'm roughly that far through the task. And again, I think very, very visually. I play a video of the task in my head and I fit myself to the video, nearest I can get to knowing what time is. But at all times, I'm anxious about time, because I don't understand it, I don't feel it, and I do not get it. Now, I said earlier on, my wife and I are about to go somewhere. She will be as anxious as me. She'll be hanging on, hoping and timing. In fact, the two of us earlier on today were really trying to pin the time, but we need to leave the house, and it's going to be just before 12:30 today. And we have to pin it and pin it and pin it and go through it and rehearse it and pin it. And two of us are very anxious. We'll be fine once it's done, because then whatever that is has been achieved. Relief. Can put that one to bed now. Don't need to worry about it. And sigh. But what about the next things? Frequently, it leads us to either be one of two ways: to cram too much into our day, or sometimes to put not enough in, because we don't know what fits. We don't know where we are. Harder one to describe, but I will do more about this when I've delved more into it. It's again, do you know, over decades I've been trying to really accurately describe what this is. It's really amorphous. It's like boxing fog for me to describe how I would fit into time, and how a lot of people I work with would fit into time. And if you do the work, how people you work with, or if you're a parent, how your child or a client is fitting into time. It's odd, and it's often the reason a lot of us balk at things, or may withdraw, or not start something, because we just don't know where and when. Anyway, I don't know how long I've been talking, but it's about time to finish. I kind of know that by the number of words and things and how long it's been going on. I'll finish it here and get back to see you again and look at more things to do with autism, time, or anything to do with autism. See, before I finish, I must say, when I do autism work, I think of the practicality. Yes, I do follow the research. I read about all sorts of things, and there are some useful things out there. But in my mentoring work and autism work in general, when I work with people, everyone I work with wants to know about practicality. They want to know how, where, when, where, who, why, how will this work. So that's really what I will major on, is those kinds of things. So I'll finish now and then do some more. But by the way, if you want to ask about anything to do with autism, do drop a line in the comments. Let me know and I can address it. And I always address these things in terms of real life, real lived ways of dealing with these things. Although behind it, there's a ton of knowledge. But I always look into the practical application and the real life applications of these things. So let me know and I'll be back online as soon as I've got something else ready.